Hey, I'm Rutledge,
Hey, I'm Connor.
and we're Friend Stream Sports. We're real friends who talk about real sports in real time. And welcome back, Connor. How was your birthday?
My birthday was amazing, Rutledge. I feel older, and that means two things. And but I'm excited to be back. I'm excited for tonight, and I'm excited to talk some Charlotte Hornets versus Atlanta Hawks. So, some big NBA news. I don't know if you followed this. The Orlando Magic tried to trade away their whole team at the trade deadline.
I did see that they tried to give away the farm, and did they ever? They are tanking for balls now. We're trying to hope Rashad Penny and Shaquille O'Neal falls in the draft again.
That'd be real nice. Yeah, tanking for balls. That's one way to put it for sure. It's funny. My athletic app just kept on dinging, and I was actually sitting with a friend of mine, and he goes, "Orlando just traded Vucevic." Like, oh wow, that, he's a pretty important player. And then he goes, "Orlando just traded Aaron Gordon," and then it was Orlando just traded Evan Fournier, and I'm like, good night. Or
Yeah,
are the Magic just trying to get into the G League?
they're just my notions of going and driving down to go to an Orlando game have now shrunk. But as we had discussed, I wasn't surprised because you and I both said they had a lot of injuries. They didn't have the roster room. They were really pinned in a corner. So I see this as a good decision for them because they didn't have much that they were going to be able to do.
Oh, that's true, especially this season. With some of their key injuries, I was kind of hoping Orlando would trade Fournier. I don't think he is necessarily all that good of a player. Like he can't be a starting shooting guard on a deep playoff run kind of team. That's just kind of my opinion. But
Yeah, I mean you're right. It was a
so
big blow off move.
So, but speaking of, and watch this transition here. Speaking of all the dust that is going to be happening this week, Rutledge, there's some dust that's going to be happening on the NASCAR track, is there not?
Yeah, Monday was the Bristol race. So Monday was the Bristol dirt race, as we talked about. Um, Picked Kevin Harvick for my pole sitter. That did not do very good. Joey Logano won, and there was a lot of talk that this went okay. NASCAR hadn't raced on dirt in a long time, and Bristol sort of volunteered as they were having a lot of trouble filling the attendance for the spring race. They volunteered to host this race, and it went kind of south. So one of the problems that NASCAR had to justify through the weekend is they were having a lot of tire erosion issues that the tires wouldn't hold up, and um, I don't know if you know this, Connor. I used to race cars as a kid. I know we talk about you played football all the time, but that was my sort of expertise sport was driving my own race car around the track. So I took a lot
That's
of notes
awesome.
away from this whole experience.
Did you like drive the Hudson Hornet car?
I did not. I drove quarter midget cars, which are smaller versions of midget cars, which are famous for dirt racing. And then I also drove,
I got an
um,
8-second violation in a video game.
look at
That's pretty
that.
neat.
That's the commitment to 2K. I also drove stock cars, similar to what you'd see in like a NASCAR race. So I had experience in kind of dealing with what they did. And
How hot does it get in those cars?
so you have to wear a 3 level fire retardant suit that you have to wear. So the car itself is not hot, but the thing that will bug you down and the breeze of sort of driving around will protect you. But the thing that will get you is the amount of protection that you wear. You get really hot as
Mm.
a kid. For NASCAR, if you ever watch it on TV, they have this big tube coming out of the middle of the middle of their helmet down, and it's basically just like a ventilator fan blowing air into them. Because when you do 500 miles or 400 miles on a mile and a half track, that's a lot on your body. I always remember um, as I was racing, the feeling of relief you have as the checkered flag flies and just kind of the adrenaline and the G forces just turn off because you got to slow down. So
What?
while
Yeah.
while racing cars is joked as oh they just turn left, there's a lot of things that go into it mentally that you have to be thinking about.
Oh yeah. So one of the things you might have to think about is how many uses for a Gatorade bottle did you come up with while racing?
None, but going to the bathroom before a race was a really big deal because once you got in there, it was there was no turning it off. So definitely race day was a thought of what am I eating, when am I eating. Yeah, I've had a couple race sides cheeseburgers and all that, but you definitely are going to have something that's going to sit in your stomach and not bother you. But once you get strapped down in your seats, especially when you pre-stage for a race and the track safety says you need to go, you don't get to get out. Oh, Clint
And
Capella
Clint
just said
Capella just
no.
took that ball out. Speaking of getting out,
So, here's the sort of things of why, from my racing experience, why I think that the dirt race didn't look as successful and why they're
Mhm.
sort of hesitating on. I don't. There hasn't been word that NASCAR is hesitating to do it again, but one of the big problems they had was tire erosion problems. And there's a couple different instances where some drivers had issues where their tires blew, especially their right rears, because of the weight and because of the special dirt tire they had to use in order to be able to competitively have grip. For if you don't know, if you race on a dirt track, you have to turn the car left, but then you basically have to, through the entire corner, turn the car right in order to prevent it from spinning around, and you can't take off too fast, and it's pretty intense about the control you have to have. So Goodyear designed a whole different tire for this, which they did some testing and some research on, but they weren't holding up to the mileage and the distance because the cars are heavy. They weigh, I believe, I can't remember the number, but they're pretty heavy vehicles. Here's the other thing which I saw in practice, and driver Kyle Busch did something very interesting. If you're a race car driver, you would have seen this. During practice, everyone runs in the same line because that's where the grip is. Kyle Busch during practices would actually run on the outsides of the line. Why? Because in his youth, he used to race on dirt tracks. And knowing in dirt tracks where the clay, because they made this out of Tennessee clay, where the clay gets compacted, that's where the grip is. That's where you can race. Everything else is like walking through snow. You have no chance of making that work. Kyle Busch drifted along the outsides to try to make the track bigger, so he knew that he could use it as a competitive advantage to pass. But they also had rain over the weekend. They were going to, instead of qualifying, have heat races, which is a very, if you're sort of a Saturday Night Warrior racer like I was, heat races are where you just have like a first race you get out there, and that determines placing for the final. And whoever wins the final takes the hardware and the trophies home for the night. They were going to do that, and they never got a chance to do heat races. And the truck race got rained out, and the race got moved to Monday. So if NASCAR wants
Mm.
to do this again, it's about them taking time to make sure the track is ready to handle. Bristol's also one of the tinier tracks on the circuit, so it really made it a struggle for them to really kind of make the whole thing work. So that's kind
Well,
of what it
that's
was.
very interesting, Rutledge.
Yeah, thank you. So that was
So
that's go ahead.
I was going to ask. So you were talking about like the different levels on the clay there, and trying to work through that. So what you're saying is, if you think about the racetrack, the bottom portion of the racetrack is less compact and therefore much harder to navigate, and probably adding to some of the tire erosion. And you needed somebody that had the experience with the with that to know, hey, I want to race where I can actually turn my car. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The race had two red flags within the first 50 laps because the track didn't have the grip for them to race. Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin had a good segment of a race off where they were battling for position because, to your point, they were experienced dirt track drivers and found the grip, and then they were starting to make it hustle. But that racing that they were doing, you should have seen in practice on Friday and not just in the last stage of fouling Vince Carter. You're going to do that? Um, the
Cody Zeller on Vince Carter. I still think Vince Carter has the advantage.
and the last stage of the race. So overall, I think it's a practice thing for NASCAR to do, very historic to their roots, but we'll see if it comes back.
Did you? I mean, what other kinds of surfaces could you race on? Right, you've got kind of asphalt and dirt. I mean, what what's kind of another potential if NASCAR wanted to do something different, but
So
still
now
do something than the asphalt?
So you kind of have to do asphalt and concrete because of the way the cars are built. That's what's gonna make that work. It's all about what the track is like. So that's why you'll see that the second race of the year, 20 years ago, NASCAR would have maybe one or two road course races during the year. The second race of the year was Daytona's road course, which they had never done before. So NASCAR is really trying to find ways to make the experience different and get the fan to come back and watch this because they know the stereotype is we just had the same kind of race over and over and over again. So it's about what does the track look like, which is why they tried the dirt thing.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.